Without further ado, we'll start with our show. Today, we'll be talking about yoga and meditation as one of the many tools in our little tool belt, if you would, to help us deal with trauma. Uh, Here we have Chris. Chris, how was your week in Egypt?
There is a lot to share from Egypt, and I'm sure we'll get into it more in another episode. Uh, but I was with a lot of people who focus on the path of helping people heal, the path of understanding emotions, the path of helping the world be a better place, the path of helping humanity, and so this. Walking through and out of the darkness was a common theme, right? And everybody there has done the work. Everybody there continues to do the work, and I was blessed. Plus, you get to go to all of these incredible temples inside the Great Pyramid, up the Nile, and get a sense for mm, how cultures have done a lot of these things over the ages, right? A lot of things that we deify, that we create these gods or ideas over are ways to be able to understand what it's like to be human, and how to make sense of it and how to step forward. So yeah, I had an incredible time. We'll definitely dive in a bit more later.
Awesome. I think it's kind of funny that for as much as we progress as civilizations go, um, we still have the same hurts. We still carry the same issues. Um, we still are people.
Hmm.
We're still human, and we just figure out new ways of dealing with things. Well, we think they're new, and sometimes we forget the old ways, and some of those old ways can actually be very beneficial. Yoga and meditation have been around for eons, where modern psychiatry and psychology are still somewhat new. They're fairly new um, creations that we've made to help us deal with some of these issues. I do have a PowerPoint presentation in order to keep us uh, on track, and I think I lost Chris for some reason. I hope you're still there, Chris. Let me see if I can get this presentation going. Let me see now. And I apologize. We're having some technical difficulties with buttons today. It seems that uh, some of this stuff has shifted around on my end, and for whatever reason, I lost Chris. So let me see if I can get Chris back and what I need to do in order to. There we go. Share my screen. All right. So today we are talking about yoga as a therapeutic modality for PTSD, depression, and for trauma. Um, Now, I did a little bit of research and I found that there are 8 different types of yoga. Hatha yoga, which I have some personal experience with, mainly because when I got out of the Navy, I used my GI Bill to go back to college. As I've expressed before, I was feeling a little beat up at the time. And so I figured yoga would be good. It's a good way to stretch and get some of those aches and pains under control. And so, what yoga did for me, kind of like a side effect, I wasn't aware, is that it actually allowed me to kind of deal with my PTSD that I was having at the time. I didn't realize it, but it was actually beneficial for me without even being aware of it. Okay, so in college, I took hatha yoga for 5 straight years in a row. Yes, I'm that slow, and and it actually helped me get through college. Okay, there's also vinyasa yoga, hot yoga. I hear hot yoga can be pretty intense. Yin yoga, Iyengar yoga, Ashtanga yoga, yoga nidara, and restorative yoga. Now, I'm not familiar with all of these. I am familiar with Hatha yoga. I think everybody's heard of hot yoga. The other ones are a bit of a mystery to me. But if you are out there and you would like to chat with us via the YouTube chat stream, please feel free to jump on board and we can definitely get your input on the yogas.
And I'm back.
And you're
So
back.
I'm back. Apparently my laptop is probably jet lagged as well, and it decided to reboot. So we're back in, and I came back in just to provide some context for this. So there are 8 types of yogas, but it's not worth getting confused over them. I think that the real important differentiation to understand is some yogas are more active, and some of them are more like restorative or passive. So if you think of most of them, like hatha, vinyasa, hot yoga, etc. They're what you would typically know as yoga. They're going to be active in poses. Some of them are more strenuous than others, and they're using that strain to be able to ground you more deeply in the body, help with the nervous system. But other ones, specifically like yoga nidra. Yoga nidra is often like a laying down yoga. It's sometimes called the yoga of sleep, and it takes you to that place that's very akin to deep meditations. It's very akin to trance or hypnosis, and is very useful in processing emotions, in taking the body from fight or flight to rest and digest. That allows for the restorative processes there.
Hmm.
So rather than worrying about all 8 names, if you can think that yoga is varied, just like when we get into meditation, you'll find that meditation is not a singular thing. There's many, many, many things that go alongside it. But you can just differentiate it super easily in your mind. Is this a more passive yoga, like yoga nidra, or is this a more active yoga? And each of those will help out better. I find that earlier in the day that the active yogas for me help out because you're getting in the body, you're getting the body moving, you're moving the energy that might be pent up through the body. I also find it's useful after times where I feel like there's a lot of emotions running through. Um, and then the more passive ones, when I'm at that place where I feel overwhelmed, when I'm at the place where stress just seems to be taking me over, but I don't have the energy to really push forward with something really strenuous, or yoga nidra, especially before sleep, is incredible for a very restful, deep night of sleep that helps you then get up and go forward. All of them are very helpful when it comes to bringing you back into your body and helping you go forth, whether you're dealing with emotional stuff, you're dealing with trauma, PTSD. They all have their uses. And you begin to learn that you have this toolbox and you apply the right tool that feels right for you at the right time.
Definitely. But I do have to say, with Hatha Yoga, at the end of each session, we would end with a little bit of a meditation.
Mm.
And from time to time, I would get so relaxed that I would pass out again. So even though it's an active yoga, it does relax you quite a bit.
Yeah, 100%.
So, when stretching and breathing become meditative. So, when you do yoga, your brain cells develop new connections and changes occur in your brain structure as well as function. So, this results in improved cognition skills such as learning and memory. Thus, yoga really did help me out when I was going through college. And yoga also strengthens parts of the brain that play a key role to memory, attention, awareness, thought, language, all the good things that somebody with PTSD has issues with. So definitely very beneficial for me, and somebody that's going through some kind of trauma, in order to kind of help get your head straight. At least that was my experience with it. So, studies using MI scans and other brain imaging technology have shown that people who regularly did yoga had a thicker cerebral cortex. That's the area of the brain responsible for information processing, and a hippocampus, the area of the brain involved in learning and memory, compared to people that did not practice yoga. So these areas of the brain are typical. They typically shrink as you age, but the older yoga practitioners showed less shrinkage than those who did no yoga, and this suggested that yoga may counteract age-related declines in memory and other cognitive skills. The not Alzheimer's, but the old-timer syndrome. And this was out of a study from the Harvard Health Educational Department. Uh, So, breath work in yoga. So, whether you realize it or not, yoga is not just exercising your body in your mind, but you're also concentrating on your breathing. And that breathing alone can help, you know, can help with the PTSD and the trauma. People actually do breath work by itself, but yoga does have breath work built into it. So here we have all exercises can boost your mood by lowering the levels of stress hormones, increasing the production of feel good chemicals known as endorphins, and bringing more oxygenated blood to your brain. But yoga may have additional benefits. It can affect mood by elevating your levels of a brain chemical called, and I'm going to mess this up, gamma aminobutyric acid, or GABA,
Yeah.
which is associated with a better mood and decreased anxiety. Any thoughts on this, Chris?
A couple. So one, yeah, GABA is very important, especially in rest for the brain. Sometimes even supplementing GABA once a week or so for a deep restorative sleep. If you're not getting a lot of restorative sleep, it can be incredibly helpful in restoring those cycles. Something that I do. Um, like you're sharing, one of the great powers of yoga, when people think about yoga, okay, it's like, okay, I'm just doing a bunch of movements and I'm on a mat and it's basically like a standing still exercise.
Yeah.
But what it's really pulling together, the deeper you go into it, and one of the reasons yoga is so incredibly helpful on its own is it's pulling together meditation, it's pulling together breath work, and it's pulling together body work, right? So you are pulling together the mind, you're pulling together the body, and then breath itself. Breath is deeply, deeply linked to the nervous system, and we're going to do a later episode and go further into breath work because it deserves its own episode. Quite honestly, it's very broad in what it can do. But it's the one area where you have both conscious control over it. You can choose to breathe right now, like breathe in, breathe out,
It's
right?
funny. I even find myself following your lead here. I've just, you get used to following
Yes.
that. Breathe in and exhale for 10 or whatever. And
Yep.
then you end up doing it. And I got to say, it's meditative. Even if you're not doing the stretches or whatnot, if you're just concentrating on the breathing, that
Yes.
on its own is very meditative. And yeah, it puts you in a better place.
And it's linked so deeply into the base nervous system, right? The place of unconscious control, because your breathing can just happen on its own, and a place where you have conscious control. It's like that one place where they link together. That's why it's so important. But yeah, yoga is bringing all three of those into one as you get deeper in the practice. That's one of the reasons that it is so incredibly beneficial.
For me, I also felt that, well, after learning about it, I felt that kind of yoga kind of tricked me into these other things that I wasn't aware of.
Dude, me too. I'm so sorry. I got excited and I'm jet lagged. I'm probably gonna get like my reactions and everything else. Yes, I forgot we talked about this. I got tricked into meditation and everything else via yoga as well.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. It's like it definitely tricks you into breath work, and it definitely tricks you into meditation. I don't care if you're doing DDP yoga. That's Diamond
Yep.
Dallas Page.
Yep.
It involves breath work and it involves meditation, and just like that, before you know it, you're meditating like some kind of snowflake eating hipster out there. And
Yeah.
I got to say, it's not that bad. It's actually kind of cool and
It's awesome. I
beneficial.
mean, it's what I loved about it is when went into those other practices, it felt familiar already. It didn't
Yeah.
feel like I was starting something from scratch. And funny enough, I don't think we've ever talked about this. I have the DDP yoga DVDs.
Nice, nice. I've actually thought about buying those. I haven't pulled the trigger on them, but just because it's Diamond Dallas Page, that's it.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly.
All right. So yoga can be complementary to your therapy, whether you're doing traditional talk therapy or whether you're taking drugs. So drug and talk therapy have been the traditional go-to remedies, right, for depression and anxiety. But complementary approaches, complementary meaning that you're doing it along with that, such as yoga, uh, also help. And yoga stacks up well when compared with other complementary therapies. So, if you're doing the talk therapy, if your psychiatrist is giving you medication for your anxiety or your depression, and you decide to take a yoga class, you're just stacking, the deck on your end, right? You're just making that tool belt, that toolbox that you have. You're just filling it with more stuff that you can use to feel better. This is definitely something that I have definitely taken advantage of.
Yeah,
So
and with that, it's not just a one in one, right? What you find is it's not just okay. I'm doing these three things, so one plus one plus one equals three. They begin to compound upon each other, right? So, just the talk therapy and yoga, and then whatever else that may be helping you, you'll find that instead of one and one is three, it could be one and one equals 10. And that's
definitely
why,
exponential.
yeah, definitely exponential.
And for those of you that don't know what exponentials are, remember back to your high school math class. I was one of those teachers that taught about compound interest or exponential growth, meaning that you get to the power of. It's like 3 to the third power is nine, that kind of a thing. And then you nine to the third power and you keep going. And then before you know it, you should have a giant bank account, right? Well, the same thing holds true when you are doing all these modalities to help with your anxiety, with your depression, with your PTSD. Every little thing doesn't just add up, it becomes an exponential um, part of your toolbox. So, yoga for depression and anxiety, I decided that I wanted to bring in some proof here. I'm quoting this from one of the Harvard studies that I read. So, a review of 15 different studies published in the Journal of Aging and Mental Health looked at the effect of a variety of relaxation techniques on depression and anxiety in older adults. In addition to yoga, interventions included massage therapy, progressive muscle relaxation, stress management, and listening to music. And by the way, I have tried massage therapy,
Mhm.
and I haven't, and I've also tried music, definitely music. And I'm not talking, heavy metal grunge type stuff. I'm talking about listening to calming music, if you would. Okay. So while all the techniques proved to be of some benefit, yoga and music were found to be the most effective for both depression and anxiety. And yoga appeared to provide the longest lasting effect. Case in point, when I was going to college on that GI Bill, if I did yoga in the morning, I would be pretty much level headed throughout most of the day. If I did not do yoga in the morning, I would get easily triggered. I would be anxious. I couldn't sit still. I had trouble concentrating. It's a sad thing. I found a study, and don't quote me on these numbers, but I found a study out there that stated that um, veterans with PTSD that are using the GI Bill tend to drop out at an 80% rate. We don't finish. And it's mainly due because PTSD makes it very difficult to concentrate. And if you're having trouble concentrating, you're not going to learn new things. So if you're a veteran and you're going to school on the GI Bill, or you're just going to school, I got to say, try yoga. It definitely works. It worked for me. I'm sitting here telling you, I'm not going to make out any money off of you. I'm not teaching yoga. Definitely not a yogi over here. Sign up for a class. Most universities offer a yoga class throughout the days, and they can make quite a difference on your academics. They really can, and not just your academics, in your life in general. Okay.
Yeah, what this goes back to what you shared earlier. Somebody who's under constant stress, right? Anxiety, stress, etc. Whether it's trauma, often trauma-related PTSD, you begin to see an atrophy in the same brain systems that yoga helps to promote the growth of. Again, we're talking about the hippocampus, talking about the frontal lobes and everything that allows for greater executive control. So even in ensuring that you don't see a degradation in your cognitive abilities, in your ability to learn, in your ability to be present and direct your own attention. And I think that's actually one of the greatest benefits. We'll talk about this again when we get to meditation. But being in that fight or flight state, or even a lower level stressed traumatic state, your attention is often not under your own control. It's going everywhere. And these practices bring that together to give you greater control over your attention. Greater control over your attention means greater control over your mind, your emotions. And then, of course, that leads you towards less triggered states.
Yeah. And here's the part I was talking about. I was tricked into, breath work and meditation. So, with an emphasis on both breathing practices and meditation, both of which help calm the center of the mind, it's hardly surprising that yoga also brings mental benefits such as reduced anxiety and depression. What may be more surprising is that it actually makes your brain work better. And again, these are not my words. This is according to the health department at Harvard University.
Yeah.
So, yoga for PTSD, right? So, me here being a prime example, Chris being a great example for depression. Uh, a number of small studies have found that yoga can help PTSD. It's not used by itself, but as an add-on treatment to help reduce intrusive memories and emotional arousal, meaning you're getting triggered, and to produce a calmer, steadier breathing. Deep, slow breaths or deep, slow breathing is associated with calmer states because it helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, it actually helps calm you down. Right? It's very soothing.
Mm-hmm. I think you've said it incredibly well. I actually don't think I have more to add there.
Okay. And now we move on to meditation, right? So if you've been doing yoga, you've been tricked into breath work and meditation. So we're going to cover meditation here a little bit. And so meditation is like sports. There are many different flavors and varieties, all with different purposes and benefits. Um, I actually had a meditation app on my phone through the VA. It was through the My Healthy Vet option. If you have an iPhone or an Android phone, you can actually go into the My Healthy Vet app, and if you are signed in through the VA system, it'll allow you to access guided meditations. So, an example of guided meditations is you'll hear somebody talking, and they'll ask you what kind of background noise would you like, whether it's some water running in the background, rain, wind, the ocean, whales. They got a bit of a selection. They even had jungle sounds. It sounds like birds chirping in the background and some crickets to give you that being in the forest type feel. But you also get a guided meditation with that. And the nice thing about it is some of those guided meditations were as quick as, 10, 15 minutes. And some of those were up to half an hour, 45 minutes, or an hour, depending on what you wanted. So, again, meditation is like a sport. There's a lot of varieties out there. Each one of them can be used at different for each individual situation, whatever it is. Um,
Yeah. Well, so with that, I'll
mhm,
go ahead and just jump in and share a little bit of a journey that I think was going to set up this part of the episode.
mhm,
Um, so where most people get introduced to meditation, where I was introduced to meditation as well, is by a lot of the apps that were out there. Back in the day, this is now probably going back, I don't know, 6, 7 years.
mhm,
It was Headspace. That's where I first got mine. Right? And many of um, they're guided meditations, and most of them are intended to help you calm down, right? To
mhm.
bring you into a place of breathing slowly, to bring you in a place that you don't feel stressed, to bring you into a place where again, your body begins to go from fight or flight, or at least being in an anxious state, to a rest and digest state. Um, I did that for several years and found it beneficial as a coping mechanism and to slowly get the body, the mind, and everything else to be able to calm more easily. The more I did it, the more easy it was to get there. What I found was because of some of the time requirements, it wasn't easy to be as consistent with it as I could, right? Like, you hear people say, I meditate for an hour every day in the mornings. And I'm like, who the hell has an hour to sit there every morning? Funny enough, I now do. But at the time, like, there was just no way. Are you effing kidding me? I'm going to sit here for an hour, and then plus sitting there, especially with the mind going in all the places, was a challenging thing. Um, a few years after that, my next place that I went to with meditations, I went to an interesting meditation retreat led by a Dr. Doug Brackman, who is a dual PhD psychologist, as well as other things. And he was working with his friend at the time, Randy Kelly, who was an ex-Navy SEAL, and they had brought together this practice that involved both shooting and meditation. I don't really think you're going to normally get these two things together, right?
Uh,
But
Oddly enough, I do have some experience with that. Once upon a time, I was a marksman, and
yes,
one, you end up jogging to get that heartbeat down, and two, you end up doing a little bit of breath work and meditation in order to. I don't know if people are aware, but as you have a rifle and your target is way off in that distance, right? Your sights, whether you have iron sights or whether you have a scope, they move up and down based on your breathing and your heartbeat. So we were taught to slow down our heartbeat based on our breathing, and we were to only pull the finger in between heartbeats because as you're breathing and your heart is pumping, you actually see that iron sight or your crosshairs go up and down. And if the target is my head or like my nose, it would just be doing this constantly.
yeah.
So you learn to slow it down as much as possible. And then with a heartbeat, it would jump back up. And then you shoot right there as it's coming down. So yes, I can definitely see a Navy SEAL meditating in order to get his target.
So it was that 100%. And in addition, it was a different type of meditation, right? So this was a meditation that was based off of some of the Zen Buddhism orientations. And so you're seated and you're looking, but it's an eyes open meditation. So you're not closing your eyes. And with this, what they found is, again, people who have had traumatic states or are in more of that active processing, perceptual, be aware. If you close your eyes, or if you're looking below the horizon, your anxiety level for a lot of people can increase, right? Because essentially this is, I'm scanning the horizon for whatever might be there.
Right.
This is that can be also associated in an acute way to hypervigilance, though it doesn't have to be hypervigilance. But what you do is, as you sit there and as you breathe and you soften your gaze, you're slowly, 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 slowly just dropping your eyes down to allow them to go as low as possible. And what happens is, when the eyes are able to go down and you're able to get them there, it's actually a cue to the nervous system. I believe it's the vagal nerve, but it's a cue to the nervous system that this is a safe place. Your body and your eyesight is actually telling your nervous system that you're safe, and you begin to slow down to a place that is a deeper level of meditation than I had ever hit before, and in a faster way. And so then when you went out to do shooting, and we were shooting, I had people who had never shot before, from 50 yards, of course, at the beginning, to we were shooting all the way out to the largest one was, did we go out to a mile? Yeah, we did 1,000 yards and then we did a mile. Because there happened to be another marksman there who was shooting for a world record, and we got to borrow his gun.
Nice.
Um, and every target hit. Like the presence with the wind, the ability to put it right on target where you needed it, the calmness, everything else was hit time and time again. So then you got the proof that this works, and you got the embodied experience of the meditation, right? So it was different than the clearing your mind, because essentially this was using your body and your eyesight to calm your nervous system down. And then from there, I got into unified mindfulness, which we'll talk about in a moment as well, which breaks up the different types of meditations into a very organizable and understandable toolkit. And then from there into brain entrainment, which we'll talk about again here in a minute, which then went into what are the different brain wavelengths of meditation and how can you use those for different levels of processing. Some brain wavelengths of meditation help with processing emotions. Some of them help the body and the mind just rest and get back into that rest and digest state. So I began to learn essentially that when we think of sports, like you've got rugby is very different from soccer, is very different from tennis, is very different from bowling. Like meditation is literally that broad. And so as you get beyond just I'm listening to this just to try to calm down so that I don't feel like I'm in overwhelm or overload or close to a trigger state, you begin to find all of these different tools that you can use at the right time, not only for the relaxation, but also for processing. And then later on for transcending. Transcending is that space of moving beyond just feeling like you're trapped in your own mind and your body to realizing that you are hyper capable. And whatever that means to you, whether that's a spiritual context for you, whether that's just that you have control over your awareness, control over where your mind goes, and you're now the one who is liberated in your experience, right? You're the one who is guiding your experience rather than feeling like you're being tugged around by the outside world or by other people or by experiences everywhere.
And just on a side note, as a former rugby player, rugby's pretty close to soccer, except you can tackle people.
Yeah, thank you. I'll remember that from now on. Soccer plus tackling people equals rugby.
Correct. So you mix, American football and soccer, you got rugby.
Yeah.
So again, for relaxation, for processing, and for transcending.
But where to start? Sorry, I mean, we're going to go through all these things, but starting with, like you said, that app in the meditations in the VA app, with something like Headspace or something like Calm is a great place to start, because you don't have to do anything but just listen, and they'll guide you through the process in order to help you be there. And the greatest tip that I got from Dr. Doug Brackman was, look, start wherever you have to start. He literally told me, do 30 seconds a day. If that's what you got, do 30 seconds a day. Yeah. And then for me, I'm like, 30 seconds, please. I'm doing 5 minutes. Like I had to prove it. But the reason he did that is because he worked a lot with special forces. He worked a lot with high achieving CEOs. And everybody would say, I don't have time. And so he'd literally tell them, all right, for 30 seconds. Yeah. And then people would resist. And I did, right? Same. I would resist sitting down for 30 seconds to meditate at times. And then you have to ask yourself, it's 30 seconds. I've got the time. Why am I resisting this?
But again, for some people, it becomes a challenge.
Yes, but that's it. Like, you become aware of the challenge.
It's right? Like 30 seconds. Fuck you. I'm going to do a minute. I'll do 5.
Yeah. Yes, and then you can do more
10,
and more.
15,
and build up over time, right? So it's way better to start low and build up over time than to say, I'm going to do 30 minutes or I'm going to do however long every day and then not do it consistently. Consistency is actually better at a lower number of minutes than inconsistency with a higher number of minutes.
My yoga teacher used to quote some Buddhist thing that the mind is like a monkey on a leash. And it is very hard to keep it still. So,
yes.
When people were having trouble with the meditative part of yoga, she would always remind us that, your mind is just a monkey on a leash. You just have to learn to control it. If it starts wandering, you got to reel it back in. It's going to wander again. reel it back in. See how long you can make it sit still.
And
And
can you wind it back in with compassion? Right? Like
yes,
I would
yes.
jerk mine like with like get over here.
You
Like what
can't really jerk yourself into peace, but
but I would judge
but there
myself.
is that frustration. There definitely is frustration when you're first starting.
Yeah. So just like again, this is part of the practice as well, and I'm bringing it specifically because this is an important part of the practice. At least it has become for me. I would every time my mind would wander and I'd have to pull it back, I would judge myself, and I would be like, "Come on, you can't just focus." And I realized that that made me aware of that internal voice that I was always using for with myself, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm talking that way with myself, how do I expect myself to be calm? How do I expect myself to get to a restful, peaceful state? How can I expect myself not to be on some edge of anxiety where it can be easier to be triggered? Right. And so I began oh, come here, Chris. Come on, back over here. There we go. Yeah, look at that. Good job.
You
Good
know,
job.
honestly, I think that's one of the reasons we are triggered because we think so lowly of ourselves that we're always beating ourselves up. And
Yes.
so it becomes this vicious cycle of beating yourself up for getting triggered and then getting triggered because you're beating yourself up all the time. You know, it's just yeah.
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 So
So this is
meditation becomes like this way to be able to calm the mind, the nervous system, the body. It helps to calm the body. In addition, then your breathing tends to come with it, just like with yoga. And so you begin practicing the breathing. Then you begin practicing compassion with yourself because you think it's going to be really easy to keep my mind calm or to keep it centered, to keep my attention in one place. And it's not. And so you learn that compassion along the way. So meditation becomes multifaceted, right? You're not just learning one thing. It's not just about attention. You're actually learning all of these things simultaneously. And the deeper and deeper and deeper you go into it, you find that there are more and more of these lessons that you're pulling in.
so research has shown that yoga and meditation can improve executive functions such as reasoning, decision making, memory, learning, reaction time, and accuracy on tests of mental acuity. Now, it's very difficult at first, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And I think going back to that, it's just the more you do it, the better you get at it. You know, you do the reps, and you'll reap the rewards. It's not an automatic thing. If you've never meditated before, it's extremely hard. But again, the more practice you have, the easier it becomes, and the longer you can meditate for. Okay, if you could only do 30 seconds, do 30 seconds. If you could do 5 minutes, do 5 minutes. If you're one of these people that has the time and you can do a couple of hours a day, and you find it beneficial to you, do a couple of hours a day, you know? And yeah. Um, a little side note, I actually started combining my meditation with walking. So
Thank you. Literally,
meditation,
sorry. I was literally just gonna say walking meditation because that's one of the things that Navy SEAL Randy used to do and taught me about. So, sorry, brain wavelength. Go, please.
definitely. So meditation doesn't mean laying in the prone position on the floor and trying to just not think, or sitting on the cross, uh, on the lotus position, with your legs crossed, what they called Indian style or crisscross applesauce, depending on which generation you grew up in. It you can actually meditate while walking, and it doesn't just mean um, not thinking about anything. It can be as simple as just a thankfulness meditation as you're walking, and observing meditation as you're walking. Just being out in nature, um, that can have the same benefits and the same effects as you know sitting still or laying prone on the floor.
And sometimes even better. I After all these years of many laying or seated meditations, I find that I'm bringing now moving meditation into my practice more and more, right? And
Yeah.
so it'll evolve over time, and you get to evolve with it. So I'm currently an even bigger fan of moving meditations than I ever was before.
Yeah. So, meditation can also reduce the activity in the limbic system. That's the part of the brain dedicated to emotions. So, as your emotional reactivity diminishes, you now have a more tempered response when faced with stressful situations, i.e., you don't get triggered as often. Or if you're really good at this, you won't get triggered at all.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, fingers crossed. Um, it's got to be an ongoing practice. You're not going to get to one point where you're like, oh, I'm not being triggered. I don't have to do this anymore. You kind of do because they do creep up back on you. I can attest to that. You'll go periods where everything's hunky dory, and something might trigger you, and it's unexpected. And thankfully, I now have meditation um, in my toolbox to help me when I do get triggered, that it doesn't become this giant emotional outburst, which was kind of getting me in trouble once upon a time. So definitely a good tool for the toolbox.
Yeah, the visual I think of for the limbic nervous system that's helped me is I think of it like it's like this. I've got a bottle of kombucha here in front of me. Funny enough, I'm drinking kombucha as we talk about yoga and meditation. Not intentionally. That's funny. I haven't had this in a
Darn
while.
hippies.
I know, darn hippies. So you get this bottle here, right? And essentially, the limbic nervous system dealing with, the emotions, all the other stuff. It has a capacity. That's what I'm trying to get at. And if you're near capacity, say that this is nearly full, it doesn't take very much to begin to overflow. And that overflow means often that is a triggered response, or at least a temper going off. For me, it would often be a temper going off, right? And as you do meditation, yoga, and other practices, it's like you're emptying this bottle down. And then it means that you have more and more and more capacity. And so you get it to a point where you can have a shock to the system. You can have something that happens that actually creates a significant emotional response for you, but it's within your capacity. So you're aware of it. You're conscious of it. You get to
Yeah.
choose your reaction. It's not that it's an automatic thing that kicks off and goes because you're not to that overflowing state. But if you don't have some practice, whatever that is for you, walking in nature, meditating, yoga, like the right practice for you, then it's that capacity will slowly diminish as you're storing up, say, more and more unresolved, unprocessed emotions. And so that's why the continual practice of it becomes really helpful. Um,
And I keep going back to the comedian Bill Burr. It's like, oh, you get emotions you don't like, you push them down, you push them down, and so that vessel is getting full until any little thing can offset it, and before you know it, it just explodes everywhere.
So
So
that's the challenge, right? So for many of us, it's not just that okay, I've got this amount of capacity, and I might be getting close to a point where it could overflow, but I've also pushed it down, so I've compressed it. It's under pressure, right?
yeah.
Once you get to beyond the point where you're actually under pressure all the time, it becomes way, way, way easier to be with all of this.
So let's keep the pressure off. Is I guess the point of this.
Yeah.
There's also something out there called mindfulness meditation, and mindfulness meditation has four different quadrants within it. One is the appreciation of the self and the world. So just see, just hear, just feel. Right? You just appreciate it. Don't judge it. Don't do anything to make something good or bad. You just appreciate. Right? Number two, you transcend the self and the world. So you see the source, you hear the source, you feel the source. And I think this is funny because I had an experience with this. You become or you be the source.
Mm-hmm.
Number three, express spontaneity. So this is the auto move, the auto speak, the auto think, or the do nothing. Right? So, is this a quick reaction that you've trained yourself to do every time? Or do we not let it affect us and just sit with it? And number four, nurture positivity. So, you want to see the good, you want to hear the good, you want to feel the good, and you want to be the good. I could almost hear Master Yoda from Star Wars saying,
Mhm.
do or do not. There is no try. So you see the good, or you don't see the good. So
So where this comes from, after the experience that I had then with meditation with Dr. Doug Brackman and Randy Kelly, and going into Zazen, seated meditation, that's the specific Zen-based Buddhist practice that I spoke of before. Then I was introduced to a meditation teacher. As I decided to go deeper, I got myself a meditation coach. And her name is Julianne Ray. She's one of the founders of Unified Mindfulness Meditation. That's what this whole practice is: Unified Mindfulness Meditation. Um, she is one of the leaders in it to take it forward. And then Shinzen Young is this beautiful man who has studied meditation for decades now. And what he does is he has a mind that at least works for me. I can relate to it, where he's very logical and also connected at the same time. And so he began to go out and explore all of the meditations across the world. Whether we're talking about Buddhist meditation, we're talking about Vipassana, long seated meditations, talking about walking meditation, talking about yoga, all of these things. He went across the world to look at all of them, whether they were related to spiritual practices or not related to spiritual practices. And he found that they fit into these four quadrants. And the reason that he began to break them up this way is because if you could identify the four quadrants, you begin to understand that there's a toolkit here. So, for instance, I can look at this and go, I feel very distracted right now. I feel like I can't really sit still. I feel like things are moving a bit fast. I know from practice, having gone through this, having gone through this, that if I do one of the appreciate self or appreciate world meditations, and the simplest one is just see, hear, feel, that brings me into presence. The way that see, hear, feel works is you just sit still, calm yourself for a moment, and then every time a thought or a sensation comes up, you just label it. So I can be here and all right. And what see means is you're seeing it either with your eyes, if your eyes are open, or in the inside of your mind, you're visualizing something. Here is I'm either hearing something in the outside world, or I'm hearing it in my brain, the internal voices and chatter that goes. Feel is I'm either feeling a sensation, like I'm feeling, say the wind or something on my skin, or I feel warm or cold, or feel could be emotions on the inside. So see, hear, feel, and literally just feel. I just felt the sensation in my belly. Here, I just heard the air filter that's going on over here. Uh, see, for some reason, my eyes are closed, and I still just saw Rod's smiling face. And so what you're doing is you're just taking note of those things. And each time you take note of one, what you're doing is you're bringing your awareness to the present moment, and everything else fades away. And you're just noting each thing that happens. And it's a super, super simple practice. But what I found is by sitting down to do that for 5 minutes at a time, and then I would go up to about 30 minutes eventually, but 5 minutes at a time. It was actually one of the best practices that I found for quieting the mind and bringing myself into the present moment. And it was so easy to do because all I had to do was pay attention. And every time something came up, I would just note it. Like, oh, that's a feel. I feel a strange sensation in my chest right now. No, I heard myself judging myself for doing a meditation here live with you guys. And so again, that's where the see, hear, feel became useful. The transcend self and world, focuses on expansion and contraction, or being source or feeling source, if you will. And it's about feeling the world beyond the world. I know this is like woo woo hippie stuff. It may seem like, but what you're doing is you're getting down into feeling beyond the realities, the stresses, the things that are affecting you, to realize that that there is more. That whether you are spiritual and you're connected to spirit, and this is your way of feeling connected to whatever it is for you, whether it's God, source, whatever it is for you, like that's there. But also realizing that in every moment, like the world is happening. Every moment there's an expansion and there's a contraction going on. The express spontaneity is helping you get out of the practice of judging yourself, and essentially what it's doing is, so auto move is a funny one. Auto move is literally, you can be in a room and however you feel inclined to move, you just move, but you're not thinking before you do it. What you're doing is you're removing that little space of judgment, right? It's like, okay, I want to move my hand. Ooh, should I move my hand? What if I move my hand on camera? Are they going to judge me? Is this going to look weird? Right? You're removing all of that judgment and it's just doing. The same way auto speak is talking without having that little line of judgment in between. Like whatever words arise, even if they make no sense, you allow them out. And you're just helping yourself to be in the moment more rather than continually judging yourself more and more. So if I find myself in a place where I feel like I'm criticizing or judging myself continually, I'll move toward one of the express spontaneity practices. And then the nurture positivity, just as a whole, is it's just like Rod was saying about going out and he would do his walk and he'd be thankful or grateful. Like it's just bringing a practice of a gratitude journal could be a practice for this. But I will just sit and think, uh, here's a perfect one. On the plane flight home from Egypt, one of the movies that I just watched was it's that one with Tom Hanks about Mr. Rogers. I think it's A Beautiful Neighborhood, I think is what it's called. And Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers is sitting in this Chinese restaurant. He's sitting there with this very jaded reporter. And the practice he brings in is, hey, let's just for 1 minute be thankful. And can you think about all the people in your life that have helped to love you into being? Like, who is that? And it's, wow, I'm actually, this is powerful for me. Like in this moment, I'm thinking of my grandfather. I'm thinking of my mother. I'm thinking of my mentor. I'm thinking of Rod. Uh, I'm thinking of my beloved upstairs, Alana. Uh, Thinking of my stepfather, Rob. Thinking of my grandmother. And I see their face, and I'm getting a glimpse of each of the ways that they have helped me or loved me, like something beautiful that's happened that I'm grateful for. And I'm literally in my body feeling a change. I felt stressed before this call because I literally woke up minutes before this show because of the jet lag. And I'm feeling a warmth spread up through my body right now and just feeling joy and appreciation. And so that's it. I just went through a practice, and it could be as simple as that. And what you're doing on a deeper level, so you understand it, is you're training your body to have more positive experiences, and you're in training and deepening the neural pathways for positive experiences rather than just having the ones for challenging experiences like anxiety, hypervigilance, anger, etc. And so the more you train those, the more easily it is to have those experiences and to continue forth that way.
Okay. Our next slide is guided meditations, and this is more Chris than I here. We got 5. We got Headspace, Calm, Inside Timer, and I'm sure this is probably French or Italian, Panache Desai, and we
Panache
have
Desai. Yeah.
Panache Desai, and we have La Ciel Foundation, meaning the sky in French. Sacre bleu.
Yeah. So I just wanted everybody to be aware of these. We'll put these into the show notes. Headspace and Calm are just apps that you can listen to and guide you through meditations. They have both free and paid for options in each one. Highly, highly useful. Insight Timer. I got introduced to that when I did the meditation with Dr. Doug Brackman. And it's the same thing. It's an app and it has some guided meditations and stuff in it. The reason I found Insight Timer very useful in the beginning is because every day when you do it, you get a little star. And every consecutive day that you do it, you get more and more stars. And so it's a gamification. And that part of me that found it challenging to meditate, but found it very rewarding to get more and more stars, it helped me develop that regular practice. I don't use the timer anymore just because I meditate every day. I've gotten to the point where that's just part of my normal practice now. Um, but in the beginning, and honestly, for the first year and a half, having that there as the gamification to give me an incentive to do it every day, even if it was only for 2 minutes, was incredibly useful. And then Panache Desai is another meditation teacher that I've learned from, along with Julianne Ray and Unified Mindfulness. Just highly recommend them. Include them in the show notes. La Ciel Foundation. I didn't know that actually meant the sky. Thank you, Rod. Same thing. They put out a meditation once a week, and I have found their meditations in particular take me to a place where it's easy to process and release pent up emotions.
Nice. Your star story reminded me of second grade when you would get a gold star for doing good that day.
Yes, that's exactly it. And because you can have friends on there and like you can see how your friends are doing, you can like have a little friendly competition of who's getting the most stars. And so it's a way to ensure that this becomes a normal practice for you.
Yep. Other meditations and tools include the Reverie app, recommended by Doctor Andrew Huberman, um, binaural beats, heart
Yeah,
math monitor, the
I'll jump
Casina.
into these.
Okay.
Just because, so these are things that I brought forth. The reason you see Rod having a little bit of troubles with the names of this is because I added all these show notes in on my flight back. Um,
Last minute, why not?
Exactly. Last minute. So you can blame me on all this. The Reverie app is essentially guided hypnosis. So hypnosis and trance is a form of meditation. It's also different. But a lot of times when you're getting into deeper meditations, what you're doing is you're getting into that centered, calm place where you have access to your unconscious, which hypnosis does as well. The Reverie app is an app that does that and has protocols for pain relief, has protocols for de-stress, has protocols for like healthier eating, stopping smoking, etc. Free. I think there are some paid options in it, but generally free and very, very helpful. Binaural beats. Binaural beats, you'll find them all over on YouTube. You can also get them in various places. But what they're doing is they're using sounds that are a little different in each ear, and that helps your brain fall into a certain brain wavelength synchronicity. Ooh, if I can get that word out, synchronicity. Synchronization. That's the word I'm looking for.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just a tool that I found that when my mind is running like crazy, binaural beats and putting them on actually help me drop into that meditative state way faster. Sometimes I won't be able to get into it even unless I have there. So it's very, very useful. The heart math monitor, and this is probably something we will go into deeper in another episode because this is going to take a bit of time to go through what heart math is and why it's being used by first responders, by military, by police, by special forces. It's a particular way of meditating and breathing that both centers and whether you're dealing with emotions that have yet to be processed, or you just had a traumatic experience and you want to process them before they become trauma. It's proven, medically proven, to be really useful. And they have a little monitor that helps you know when you're in the space. One of the challenges with meditation is I don't know if I'm doing it right. That's how I felt for a long time. There's literally a monitor. You hook it up to your ear, and you have on your phone like a little graph, and it shows you like when you're in that meditative state and when you're not in the meditative state. And by getting that feedback, you literally begin to guide yourself into the meditative state easier and easier and easier. Like imagine like having somebody who's there with you going, nope, you just did it right. Yep. Perfect. Like when you've got a good coach and you're doing something and they're giving you constant feedback so that you know you're on the right path and it makes it 100 times easier to get there. That's what this does. Casina and BrainTap are two different devices that both have binaural beats, and they have like this little panel that goes in front of your eyes that with LEDs that flash. The optic nerves are connected directly into the brain, as are again like ears and hearing. And by stimulating them in various ways, they help your brain just tune into various meditative states super, super easy and quickly.
Hmm.
So they're tools that assist with getting into meditative states. And I have used a lot, both on myself and with other people that I've helped along the way. And then Sense.ai. I'm bringing this one up here, and we'll go into deeper. One of the things that I did as part of my meditative journey is I did something called 40 Years of Zen, which is run by Dave Asprey of Bulletproof. And he founds it, and then Dr. Drew Pearson is the neuro scientist who runs it. And you end up in these little pods. You have electrodes all over your head, and they're monitoring your meditative state and giving you constant feedback, and other things to help you entrain those meditative states in a really deep way. It's very expensive, to be perfectly honest. It's I think $15,000 to go there for several days to do it. That same technology is being released in something that's very, very affordable. It's currently on Indiegogo right now. And full disclosure, it's a company that I've invested in because I believe in it that much. And it is one of the best ways that I've found to accelerate the pace at which you can attain these meditative states. And it's not just that you need the device to hit them. Once you've trained them and your brain has been rewired to function with them and to get there more easily, like, you retain the skill for the rest of your life.
Nice. Kind of like riding a bicycle.
Yeah, kind of like riding a bicycle.
Yeah. So I wanted to end with where to go for help. I realize that sometimes we're here telling stories and we're not offering a lot of guidance. So if you want to do yoga or if you want to do that kind of meditative stuff, you can always hit your local yellow pages, your Google Maps, whatever it is, and find yourself a yoga studio. But if you're having problems with mental health, substance abuse, that kind of a thing, there's an organization called the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, or SAMHSA for short. Their website is www.samhsa.gov. Their 800 number is 1 800 662 HELP or 4357. And they even have a TTY number at 1 800 487 4889. It's free, it's confidential. They are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That includes Christmas. Okay. This is not treatment. They are a referral and information service. They provide the information in both English and Spanish for individuals and the families of individuals facing mental or substance use disorders. Now, they do not provide counseling. They are trained specialists. Okay. So if you're having a rough time and you need somebody to calm you down, they are a good source for that. Okay. A specialist will answer the call, get you connected to somebody locally, and they will even patch you through if you need to get talked down from wherever it is you're at. And they can also send you to the appropriate intake centers in your state, your city, your county, whatever it is, um, in order to provide you that assistance and support. Okay. So I really want to start doing this from now on, Chris. I want to give people um, guidance on what are some of the things out there that are available to them. Okay.
Definitely.
Um, if with that, did you have anything additional that you'd like to add?
No, not in this moment. The other thing I guess we'll add is in the show notes for each show that we do. We put a list of resources as well.
Mhm.
Um, I guess the only thing we didn't get to that because we've hit the hour, let's hit next time is to reflect back on talk therapy. I have a couple of things to add that I think will be helpful for people out there from talk therapy we did in
Sure.
episode 8. Um, and continue this forth. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We look forward to seeing you next week. Remember, same bad time, same bad channel. And remember, you're not alone. And going through this stuff is perfectly normal. You are a human being, and sometimes we stumble. And for those times that we stumble, we hope to create that safe space where we can talk about it and help each other up because sometimes we need a hand.
Beautiful.
Good night, folks.
All right. Big love. Be well.
Big love.